Hi there, this is Kersti.
And Leela.
Back in time for another Telf English Podcast.
We're coming to you from Canada's Atlantic coast.
And we are thrilled to have you back for a chat. For more information and everything else you need to know, visit www.telf.cz.
That's www.telf.cz.
Now, let's get on with it. Are you ready?
I am ready. Are you ready?
Yes.
Let's go!
Telf Special Guest Podcast number 2. Hi everyone, we're back again with another special guest this week. My friend Amy. She is an author, an anthropologist, a visual artist, and a new mom, and she's taken the time to come and talk to us today. Amy, tell me a little bit about where you grew up.
So I grew up in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, quite a distance from the capital of Halifax, about a 5-hour drive, about 500 kilometers, I think, on the Atlantic coast. About as far as you can get on the mainland of Canada before you end up in the Atlantic Ocean in Newfoundland. And I lived in what was called industrial Cape Breton until I was about 18. And then I began working in northern Cape Breton in Ingonish during the summers and living all over the place in the wintertime.
All over the place. That's a big place. And that's where I met you, Amy, in Ingonish when we were both working for a national park in Ingonish, which was a lot of fun. And I think we connected a lot over the natural beauty of the area. And nature has certainly played a big part in the work that you do across all the different disciplines that you've touched. Tell me how nature inspires you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very large question. My training is in anthropology. I'm also a writer, so my kind of main academic interest is multi-species storytelling. So how can we empathize with non-human animals in ways that are kind of meaningful and tangible? And certainly I started thinking about those questions when I was working for the national park and trying to think about how to talk about non-human nature for tourists.
And you're about to embark on some pretty exciting research down the road.
I am, yeah. I'm currently doing a doctorate, a PhD, where I'm trying to research how we know what we know about whales. So how scientists study whales, how they gain their insights, and also whether there are dimensions of that research that we could do better if we weren't so focused on measurable science. So if we, what we can learn by spending time on boats with whales, by doing observation, by kind of hanging out with them, and also I'm interviewing scientists about what they already know that is qualitative, that is story, that has narrative that they don't publish because that's not what scientists do. I spent a couple of months last fall on the Bay of Fundy hanging out with humpback whales. I'm planning to go to northern Quebec this summer to a place called Mingan Archipelago. Is that right?
Yeah, Mingan Archipelago.
That's how you pronounce that?
That's how I pronounce it.
Archipelago. So it's on the northern, it's almost as far north as the Trans-Canada Highway goes. And they study humpbacks there and also blue whales. So I'll be hanging out there for a few weeks and then finally heading to Cape Town, South Africa at the end of the year to spend some time with researchers who study these supergroups of humpback whales that have begun to migrate along the coast of Africa at times that are very unusual for them. So usually they would be gone to Antarctica by October, November, but instead they've been staying in the waters, I guess the Eastern Atlantic Ocean. They've been staying there in groups of 150 or 200 whales, and no one knows why. And that's only been the past kind of 5-10 years, so that I think should be really exciting.
Wow. Yeah, you'll be on the cutting edge of this research.
Yeah.
Exciting, especially with a baby in tow.
Especially with the baby in tow, yeah. Indeed.
So you are a new mom. How are you enjoying that?
It's been intense. I was listening to Tim saying how he was enjoying fatherhood. I think it's comparable. It's definitely like nothing I've ever done, but also not as discombobulating as I thought it would be. And it's been about 3.5 months, and I've been starting to feel kind of normal again, like doing some of my own work a little bit and being able to be away from the baby for a couple hours at a time, which is great. But it's been quite magical, and I feel very grateful to have had a fairly easy experience, I think, so far.
And you have a spectacular baby boy.
I think so.
I think so too. I would wholeheartedly agree. Nature has also played a big part in a lot of your painting. Mm-hmm. I know certainly your paintings, I've seen some of Amy's paintings, just as an aside here, that I'm absolutely in love with. They're stunning. From her earliest ones of flowers, that iris, that's one of your earlier paintings, isn't it?
It's my second oil painting ever. Yeah.
Your second oil painting.
The first one was an apple.
And the first was an apple. And that's hanging in the kitchen in Ingonish, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So natural objects inspiring it. And then the cows. You've also given me a gift of a beautiful painting of a moth on cobblestones next to the ocean. But the cows, you seem to be particularly fond of painting cows.
I do seem that way. I'm not sure why. I'm really compelled by light and texture, and I think there's something about the shape of cows' bodies and how it seems to mimic the shape of grasses, like tall grasses in the wind. I think that I find really compelling, but also the texture of fur seems to me to lend really well to oil paint. But I think the thing that I'm drawn the most to is light, and cows. I happen to have spent a fair amount of time around farms, and they stand still for a long time, so it's easy to photograph them with the kind of light that I find interesting. And I think also they're not a cliche in the same way that other animals are. I've got this really beautiful photo of a caribou, a herd of caribou, and also a couple of individual caribou in Newfoundland with the kind of light that I'm really interested in, but I think it would just be a boring painting.
And you did live in Newfoundland for a while.
Yeah.
And you saw a herd of caribou there.
Yeah, in Grossmorn.
Grossmorn National Park. Wow. It's incredible, the nature we have here, so easily accessible.
Absolutely, yeah. Meanwhile, the town where we're living now in Truro, Nova Scotia, is overflowing with deer. So they're quite a municipal controversy. They've been taken up quite a few town council meetings, what to do with the deer. I don't find them offensive at all. They're a trouble for gardens, definitely. You have to have a good deer fence, but we regularly see groups of 6 to 12 deer just hanging out on the sidewalk or in the backyard. One time last summer, I went into our backyard and there were 4 deer there, and one of them came over and licked my hand. I had no food. That was just what he did. I think it was a young male, and he came over and kind of licked my hand and sniffed it and then walked off.
Amazing. Are they having issues with the deer becoming habituated and causing accidents or being killed by cars?
The deer are definitely habituated. They also seem to understand dog leashes quite well, so they aren't terribly worried about the dog. When she's barking, if she's on a leash, they know that she can't get them. There aren't really very many deer outside town limits, and no one drives fast in town, so I don't really think there are very many fatalities related to cars.
Good. So hopefully there's a balance. There has been some talk about a cull. I don't know if they've passed that.
It happened, I think, but I don't know how it went. But it also happened on a marshland behind the mall, which is technically within town limits, but I'm sure it was different deer than the ones that are bothering people in town proper. So I think it was more of a show than anything else.
I see.
But I read an article about there's a couple of towns near here that also have deer. One of them was Pictou, Nova Scotia, and the news article said people were concerned about the deer using streets and sidewalks. And causing nuisance in the garden, which don't seem like terrible crimes to me.
There are much greater crimes in the world. Speaking of gardens, you are also a part of Holdfast Farms, which we spoke about a while back with Tim. Mm-hmm. And you're the lead flower arranger of Holdfast. Yes. Is this a new passion that you found, or have you always been into arranging flowers?
I've always loved flowers. My high school best friend and I, a man named Breton, when we graduated from our undergraduate degrees, we had no jobs, and so we took jobs working in a flower warehouse in an industrial park. Yes, an industrial park outside Halifax. And we worked these grueling 12, 14-hour days arranging Bloomex flower bouquets for Mother's Day. The conditions they were stored in were so terrible, and they were very cheap, and the return rate was like 20% because the bouquets were so bad. So I think I've took a break of about a decade after that, and now I'm back to flower arranging. But I think it's been really nice because I have always felt like I love making things. And I've always felt that I should be making things to sell, but all I want to do is to make like 5-foot-long paintings that you have to sell for $2,000, and no one has that kind of money to buy paintings, so it's not the kind of thing that you take to a farmer's market reasonably. And so the flowers have been really nice because I can exercise my creative drive without feeling like I'm compromising my artistic drive. Because it's just kind of a small thing, and it eventually, it dies. It like sometimes the bouquets look different from the beginning of the market to the end of the market. So it's got kind of a life cycle, but it's, bringing a similar kind of beauty, I think, to people's lives.
Wonderful. Thank you for bringing that beauty to people's lives. You've certainly brought a lot of beauty to my life.
Well, you have to mine as well. Tim and I argue a lot about whether it's okay to use flowers that aren't perfect. So he has some very strong feelings about, he's got a lot of pride in his gardening ability. And when a disease happens or a flower is partially eaten by an insect or something, he doesn't want us to sell it. But I think they can be very beautiful despite that. We had a whole flock of zinnias last year that were pale green, and they had this disease that gave them black spots. And I just thought they were gorgeous. So I sold a few when he wasn't there.
We won't let him listen to the podcast. Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And maybe we can check in with you after you come back from South Africa to see what you found with the humpbacks there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be amazing.
For sure.
Best of luck with it all, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Kersti.
That's it for today.
Thanks for joining us.
Please share and let us know what you think.
Keep up the great work, and most importantly, join us again next week. The voices you heard on today's podcast are that of Leela Tuckrider, aged 9, and myself, Kersti Tuckrider. Music was performed by Mika Jordan, aged 13. The first and final pieces are traditional Irish tunes, while the second fiddle tune was composed by Mika himself. Thanks also goes to our sound engineer, Jamie Jordan.